Sarah wanted to orient you guys first, as the first order of business here.
Just a quick introduction. So I'm Sarah Egan. You've probably received emails from me. I work with the City Secretary, Ashley Owens. I don't know if you've met her. So I started with the city in September of last year. So I don't know everyone just yet, but why we're here is because we want you to know that we are available to you all. And if you have any questions, concerns, especially with the OMA, the Open Meetings Act training, or the Public Information Act training, you can always approach us. Obviously, you can reach out to Matt. But we are here for you, and we do appreciate your cooperation in terms of taking that training, as well as, keeping in mind the attendance policy, and then recently adopted the ethics pledge. Everyone was really responsive. So we really do appreciate that, because we can show, hey, the city is compliant with all the things that we need to do, not just on the state side, but also globally. So anyway, so I'm Sarah. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns. We're open. We're here for you. And I'll hand it over to the city attorney.
Thanks. We initially, before this was going to be an opportunity to do what I call Board of Adjustment training, and we were going to go over all that, but lo and behold, we have an appeal. We wrote an ordinance regulating our short-term rentals here in town, and we've recently enacted a new ordinance about a month ago for short-term rentals. So what we did, what we have tonight is an appeal hearing. The city has revoked a short-term rental permit for one of the registrants. And we'll get into that when I go out there, but suffice it to say that it was a result of them, I don't want to say misrepresenting, but we found out that the short-term rental home that they own, it was not his primary residence, which is a requirement of the ordinance. And we'll get into the evidence of that. And so Louis Raheel, who is in charge of that enforcement branch of the city with regard to short-term rentals, revoked his permit. Under the ordinance, he is entitled to an appeal to you. And so we feel the burden is on him to show there's reasons why it should not have been revoked because of that violation. I think he's made some claim that he does live there, but we'll get into all that, into the evidence. So what you're going to do tonight is you're going to have that hearing, and if you've seen, and for those of you who are experienced with Board of Adjustments, we're going to do it. The same procedure is going to be identical. We're going to open it. I'll give an opening statement as to what I think the evidence will show. If they want an opening statement, they're certainly entitled to do so. I'll leave that up to you, Mark, to ask him if he wants to frame the issue as he sees it. I'll present Mr. Raheel as our primary witness. There may be residents that show up before we start taking testimony. Anyone's going to testify has to get sworn in, just like Board of Adjustment. Those kind of rules. I've got notebooks for y'all with what we think is our evidence to demonstrate that what Mr. Raheel did was appropriate. I don't know if they'll have any witnesses. He's been non-communicado. I've not heard from either him or anyone representing him. So we'll put on our case. We'll kind of rest. You can put on his case, just like we do in the Board of Adjustment. And at the end, I'll give a little closing if you want to give a little closing, and you get to make a decision. It requires 4/5 under our ordinance, just like a Board of Adjustment decision does. So it'll require you, 4 of you, to say that we'll reverse the decision of Mr. Raheel and reinstate his. But you'll have that discussion. I've left this so you can do it either publicly or privately. Yeah. You can come back and discuss it amongst yourselves. I will not be present. Mr. Raheel will not be present. Matt will not be present. It'll be just you all. If you want to do it privately.
I'd like to do it privately. Do you want to do it privately?
Sure. That works.
I think that would be better.
and you can deliberate, and then someone needs to come out and make a motion as to whatever your decision.
And do we frame the motion as we do with the Board of Adjustment?
Yeah, with this one, the way the ordinance is written,
Yeah,
they'll have this available to you. I had mine marked.
So we'll come back here for private deliberation?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says the board upon completion shall by a majority vote of 4/5 overturn the decision of the city manager designee. So your motion would be a motion to overturn the decision. It would require 4 affirmative votes. If there's only 3 to overturn the decision, then it fails, and then Mr. Reveal's decision. Then and at the end, I'll offer to do an order to reflect whatever the decision.
Okay.
so we make a motion to overturn
Yeah,
the decision.
right.
Okay.
That
And
would be granting his relief, granting his appeal, and
Yes.
overturning the decision.
So if we don't want him to get his permit back, we say no, nay.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
E-
okay.
Even if you say yay, there's still, I need 4 yays. So,
Okay.
but I'll help you through that, as we always do. Sometimes it gets confusing if you make a negative motion, because no means yes and yes means no.
Yeah.
That's why I do it a positive motion, because if you don't want to grant him his relief, it's easier just to say no and yes,
Yes.
than to worry about saying yes means no and no means yes. So that'll be the procedure that we'll employ this evening. It's almost exactly the same, so you could, don't sit there and try to memorize what I told you. Run it just like you do the BOA meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Except
how's
we
that?
get to come back here to deliberate.
You can come back here and at least deliberate, but you can't make a decision back here. You can make a decision for someone to make a motion, and then go out and come out and
Okay.
just can't vote back here.
Sounds
If you have a
like
question, you need answered from either me or the applicant, come back outside, and both of us will come back here while you ask the question, so that we both have an opportunity to be here, so that there's no secret meeting
Got it.
with the presenters. I've got notebooks for y'all, and I'll pass those out when we get to the case. You've got some other business to take care of, normal BOA business, which is kind of rudimentary, but
I have a question.
Yes.
So when they come back here for private deliberation,
yes,
we do not record that, correct?
you do not.
Okay. So we'll need to let Julian know.
And what you can discuss is whatever evidence is permitted, introduced and admitted, you can bring back with you, and that's it. No notes, no anything else. And whatever
This will
your
be-
remembrance is of the testimony.
Okay, but it will be recorded in here too as well? No? Okay. All right,
Your deliberations in private.
okay.
So, and then you have to come out in open session and actually make your motion and take action.
Back here, we can discuss the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And then, it might be appropriate for you to make maybe small comments that, we don't figure the city didn't prove their case, or he didn't prove his case, and based on the evidence, and we've deliberated. It's kind of like a jury where you read the jury verdict, but you actually have to do it by motion.
Well, based on the definition of primary residence, I mean, it should be pretty cut and dry.
It doesn't have to be any more difficult than it needs to be. Well, that's all I'll say. It seems pretty cut and dry from our perspective. However, everyone's got a story to tell.
That's right.
To that point, I might be getting ahead of myself here. So our role tonight for this is only to affirm or decline the city's rejection based on primary residence.
Right.
And that's it.
Because that's what the issue.
So that's the only thing we're,
Because when we get into it, but if it's not your primary residence, the way the ordinance is written, it's a requirement for you to have an STR. So if it is not your primary residence, then you can't have an STR in town. You can't buy a piece of property and turn it into a hotel. That's an editorial comment on my part. You have to live there
it's a residence.
as your primary residence.
Okay.
And there's a definition, and I've got the ordinance as part of my exhibits, so you'll have the ordinance in front of you. You will have the exhibits. So, it seems cut and dry. I don't know what he's gonna say, so subject to what he says, it might be less cut and dry, but. And then I did, if you have questions, Mr. Chairman, then I would encourage you to ask them at a time when you and the rest of the board think it's appropriate to ask. If you need to interrupt me, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. This isn't court. And I'd rather your question get in. This is like where jurors get to ask questions, which they're not supposed to do, but I've got judges that let the jury ask questions.
I mean, that's crazy.
I know, it's nuts. It's not their role. So, you're supposed to listen. And don't try my case for me if you're gonna lose it. Judge isn't even supposed to ask questions, right? And the jury judge. Do you have any questions?
Are you gonna have slides up there for the sections
Every-
where the infractions occur?
I have books for everybody.
Okay.
We also have our slides are on a thumb drive.
Okay, that's-
And I'll have to ask Mr. Raheel to work the slides
Our projector license.
when he's testifying. I don't know, we've not heard back from him, so
Okay.
He may not show up.
he may not.
So if he doesn't show up, we still go
We're
in?
gonna put the evidence in the record. Yeah. It'll be very short. And I'll let you just talk.
We appreciate your guidance.
Is the filing fee the same as it is for a BOA? They have to pay
I can't
$50?
remember. I think they have the right of appeal without a fee. We need to take that into consideration when we set the fee for the permit in case there's administrative costs of administering the program. So we'll get our fee up front.
But on a side note, because we revamped our short-term rental, which now the primary residence, and we have, the other one's a little bit more strict, so we might see more cases in near future for sure.
Yeah, the new ordinance is strict. This is actually under the old ordinance.
Okay.
Because that's when he had his permit and that's when the revocation occurred prior to the new ordinance being adopted last month.
And
But I put the right one in your packet.
if it's revoked, he has, what, 6 months before he can reapply, is that how?
Yes. And it was revoked in January, so he could reapply in July.
And
Okay.
not to derail entirely, but the new ordinance that's being done, is there like 3 bullet points of main difference between there, or is it vastly different on the new?
It's not
ordinance?
vastly different. There's some additional requirements. You can get it revoked easier. If we have calls for service where we're having parties and complaints, things like that,
Gotcha.
that's now grounds to, and if you have so many, you're done here. You can't reapply.
There you go.
You know, the goal of both ordinances is to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. And if you cannot do that, we have an easier way to revoke their permit.
Yeah. Well, what's happened is there's been some court cases that have fallen on the city side where it's been challenged. And they go, no, you know, you can't do this or you can't do that. And so
Okay.
we'll have some additional requirements, hopefully in June, that you have to get a zoning.
Whoa.
Because zoning has been upheld in Arlington. So, which I've
Quite-
been
quite the hurdle.
been an advocate of, but we have a court case now supporting that. So that will help immensely so that we can capture, because what we find, and this is not anything to do with tonight's thing, it's just, what we find out about these after the fact, in many cases. People don't come in and register, they just start listing on Airbnb and don't pay their tax because they owe us hot tax, which is an indication that it's really a business, not a home. So I'll start advocating here in a minute.
Just a quick
So I'm not a
question,
fan of these.
a legal question for you. If anybody here owns an STR, can be in this room or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a public meeting. And come and testify if they want to take.
No, I mean one of the members.
Oh, yeah, they can. Yeah. It's not illegal, it's just regulated. It may be illegal in the future, but it's not. Any questions, Mr. Chairman? Cool.
Mr. Chairman, are you okay if I go with number 4 on the agenda?
And 4 on the agenda, hold on a second, I gotta see what that was.
Discussion regarding 6 questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go for that.
Okay, so before we do this, does everyone know each other on the board? Do we want to go around and introduce?
Yeah, we ought to
ourselves?
go around because I see everybody so frequently. You know. I'll start. I'm Martha Brew. I'm the chairman.
I'm Michelle Anderson, I'm the vice chairman.
Casey Smith?
And I'm Kyle Rogers.
And I'm Kenneth Cole.
All right. And we got our.
I don't like your shoes.
Oh, fine.
You've never heard that, right?
Anybody else want to be identified?
Well, so my name is Matt Steer. I'm the Development Services Administrator. We've got Louis Rahil, who's,
Louis Rahil, Assistant Director of Community Development.
and then Steve Schubert is our new Chief Building Official, who's
Oh, all right.
actually going to take over as the liaison for this committee or this board.
Oh, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And then we've got Vanna.
Yeah, my name is Vandana. I'm the admin tech over at Community Development.
And I'm Shelby, I'm also an admin tech at Community Development.
And Candy Biodas.
And I'm Cammy. I'm your board secretary. I'm the one that's going to email you all.
I'm sorry.
I'm Cammy.
Oh, yeah. I know. You're the boss.
Right. Apologies for the number of emails recently, trying to get things squared
But
away.
I saw you over the
Yeah, oh, that guy.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly.
I'll pass this down here. These are the 6 questions. And so these are questions written by Patrick Lencioni. He's considered an organizational performance expert, and he's written several leadership books designed around organizational culture. So one of the things he teaches us is that in order to create a healthy organization, in this case, board or commission, then we need to create clarity to make sure every member is completely aligned around these 6 critical questions. And so this handout lists these questions that the city staff has answered for our organization, and these right here are the answers that staff's put for our organization. So each board and commission liaison, me, was asked to do this exercise with each of our respective boards and commissions. So I'm giving you homework for next week, or for next meeting, I guess, is to come prepared to discuss this when we meet next time. Come with answers to these questions of your perspective for what this board's purpose is. So the first question is, why do we exist? Why do we make a difference in the world, and why is it worth doing this? The second question is, how do we behave? And these are 2 or 3 behavioral examples that are invaluable within the board. What are the small handful of things that we just won't appoint someone to the board or commission that doesn't have these qualities? And then what do we do? We have to know what business we're in, what service we provide, and the regulations we enforce. So how will we succeed? What's our strategy, and how do we make intentional decisions and ensure that we have the best possible chance to succeed? Then number 5 is, what's most important right now? What is going to be our rallying cry? And then number 6 is, who on the team must do what? And so there's a video, Patrick Lencioni, look him up on YouTube, and he talks all about these 6 questions. And he's been really good in helping us identify our culture within the organization. So spend some time, read through these questions, and then give me a call if you have need any help answering them for our next meeting.
As you do this, understand what you do generally tailored to this kind of program, because you make decisions based on evidence people bring to you. You don't do, like planning and zoning, make recommendations. The Ford Board makes recommendations for legislative action. So your role is different, so you'll
Yeah.
find this great. This will be more difficult for you to,
For
I
sure.
think it's to teach you what the philosophy of the city is as you conduct your business more than anything else.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be more regulatory focused than our other boards and commissions.
And we're just doing this as a philosophical exercise to get a better grip of what we do. We're not actually submitting this for description of what the board does as a description moving forward.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
making sure it wasn't like
Yeah,
official.
so
Not
you
getting
guys,
great.
Yeah, like, oh no,
Yeah.
so
let's screw this up.
Yeah.
what we'll do with these answers is, moving forward, when we have interviews for the board, we can introduce these concepts so that everyone that steps on the board has a good introduction, a good baseline to kind of what the focus is.
Now, you will be graded on the curve, understand
Yeah.
That'll become part of your permanent school record.
Dang it.
what he said.
Goes with your attendance record.
Yeah. So we do have election of officers out in the regular session. So typically with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we'll have some discussion back here so that you guys can figure out who wants to be the chair and the vice chair. So if you guys wanted to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
it's been a year already since we've done this.
Yeah,
Seems like we just did this
Yeah,
last.
isn't
You
it?
know, we only meet like 2 or 3 times a year, so it's like just 3 meetings ago we did this. And so
Yeah.
I feel like the time-
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Well, I'd love for you to remain the chairman,
Okay.
and I'd like to remain vice chairman.
I think we organize a coup just to really make it interesting.
After you see the meeting tonight, you might think, man, it's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. Sometimes you get those really colorful meetings, make you kind of not want to be there.
Well, with this STR program, since you guys have been appointed, you may have a little more work. Because this is going to be a point of contention, not just here, but other places, because it's reaching a loggerhead in a lot of cities. There's a lot of problems with them.
I'm inspecting a lot of houses now that are, you can tell they're being set up to be.
Well, you know,
Airbnbs.
I can get on my soapbox. It has nothing to do with it tonight. You know, homes are not built for this kind of turnaround. You know, and if you have rental, even long-term rentals or annual rentals, you know, those homes are meant for families to be there and for the owner to tinker with the lights and fix this and that as things break because they're there all the time. It's a different kettle of fish when you start renting, especially when you have that turnaround, the turnaround like these. It's like running a hotel, if you ask me. You know.
Yeah.
So then the maintenance issues need to be taken care of that night. You got guests and you have someone else coming tomorrow and something else breaks. And so it's just a different, and then of course, and that's not to mention the neighbors. I want to live in New York, I live in New York.
Well, that's
Nothing
it.
wrong with that. It's just not-
Got a half an hour to burn. Anybody want to eat more pizza?
Could you spell that author's last name, please?
Lencioni.
Why don't
it's
they watch it while they're
L-E-N.
here? Why don't you bring it up?
Did you- Well, that'll steal my presentation, because basically I just presented what I'm doing. So here, L-E-N-C-I.
I-O-N-E.
L-E-N.
O-N-E.
O-N.
Oh.
Close.
You will.
One C, and one N. But, yeah, I can play the video for you guys.
Actually, he said
I will look at it.
So here he is, Patrick Lencioni.
It's not that looking at me, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
This is on record.
So he says it a lot more eloquently than I say it. Let's see here.
Yeah.
When it comes to creating a healthy organization, the second discipline is about creating clarity in an organization by making sure that the executives are completely aligned around 6 critical questions. Let me take you through those questions right now. The first question is a simple one, but a critical one, and that is, why do we exist? Every organization needs to understand that ultimately there's some idealistic reason why that organization must exist, why it makes a difference in the world. Now, many companies hesitate to do this because it seems too ethereal and too abstract, but every company needs to inspire their people and provide themselves with a context to understand why it's worth doing this in the first place. People get out of bed in the morning because they know that there's a real reason why their job matters in the world. The second question we have to answer is, how do we behave? These are the 1 or 2 or 3 behavioral values that are completely inviolable within an organization. And every organization needs to understand what are the small handful of things that will never hire somebody if they don't have those, and will never make a decision that violates those things. How do we behave? The third question is a very simple one, and that is, what exactly do we do? A company has to know what business it's in. And this is a pretty straightforward question to answer, but we worked with enough organizations where they weren't quite sure what business they were in. Are we a services firm or a products firm? And really, what is our focus? So this is the third question. First, why does this matter? Second, how we behave and what's critical to the way we deal with one another. Third, what business are we in? And then we get into the next 3, which are a little more complex, but critical for creating clarity. The next one is, how will we succeed? This essentially gets down to strategy, which is a word that gets overused and it's not often understood. What we mean by strategy in this case is, how will we make intentional decisions that will differentiate us from our competitors and ensure that we will have the best possible chance to succeed? Okay, there's a lot that goes into that. Fifth question. What is most important? What is our top priority right now? Every organization needs to have a rallying cry, something that is the most important thing going on in that time period. And we're usually talking about 3 to 12 months. If an organization doesn't have a clear #1 priority, then there's too many things that could be important. And you can often deviate toward mediocrity. Something has to be most important. Finally, the 6th question is, who on the team must do what in order to make sure that we succeed? Do we really understand the roles and responsibilities of the people on the executive team? Too often we rely on titles, and that's just not enough to understand what we're responsible for. If an executive team can answer these 6 questions, and I go into more detail in my book, The Advantage, on how to do that. If they can answer these questions and leave the room completely aligned around them, they're going to be able to go out and communicate and build an organization where clarity reigns and success becomes very, very likely.
Is that it?
That's it. So, yeah, so basically, we're doing this with each of our boards and commissions, so, you know, we've
I
done
have
it
a
as
question.
one.
Are you answering this question is what my role is in the organization? Or are you asking
No.
in of
As
itself?
a board. As a board. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
This
how do we
as a
succeed?
board.
How do we succeed
as a board?
We take the evidence, we make a decision.
In
That's
accordance
how we-
with the regulation.
In accordance with
Right.
On a
Right. It
consistent
might
basis.
might be really simple for you guys to come up
Yeah.
with these answers.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was just probing to see if they were looking for something else.
Something deeper.
Yeah.
no, this,
Why do I exist?
I
Do
ask
I
myself that
exist?
all the time.
This could be an existential exercise.
We
Like, what's
exist
my
because we have
purpose?
Okay.
to.
I don't know my purpose.
We are.
well,
Whatever
so
means. Our philosophy is based on our experience.
We've all read The Advantage, and it's a really good book.
Sorry.
Did you have anything to add about
Absolutely.
the 6 questions or The Advantage?
No, I don't have any simple questions.
Hey, I want to ask you, are you going to answer the 6 questions during tonight's proceeding?
Me?
Yeah.
I can if you would like me to.
Well,
Yeah. Well, if you bring them up.
Do you have to now answer these same questions as staff members too?
we've done that, and that's the example I provided. So right here, let me present to you the evidence. No, I'm just kidding.
Mark,
But
you
this
have to
has-
mark it first.
As the organization, actually, we're going back and refining our last two questions, because when this was done, the thing that was most important right now wasn't right
I
now.
think you ought to ask me those questions. I'm serious.
All right.
So next Thursday, 9 o'clock,
I mean,
should do his office.
although I'm not an employee and I'm not a board member, I play a role in all
Oh,
that.
for sure. Yeah.
Why do I exist?
Why don't you come?
Okay.
Prepared next time?
I'm gonna give you you're gonna be my, liaison.
I'm afraid to see what comes out of this.
Are you arguing the city's case then?
I'll have two, one that you can give to the
Also,
rest
he has
and
the
one you
largest
can
holdings, just can't tell him to do it.
I want to see that one.
Yeah.
That would probably be
I'll go over
better
it
taste.
at our next board
So
meeting.
he'll do.
Well, so yeah, everyone gets more pizza, and if we wanted to adjourn the work session, we can take like a 30-minute break. I don't know if you want.
Okay, anybody have any other business for the work session?
No, sir.
If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn the work session,
All right.
and we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock in the council chambers.
Thanks, Mark. Good job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock, and it's time for the Board of Adjustments meeting for Thursday, May 5th, 2022. All right, so next item on the agenda right now is citizens' appearances. Are there any citizens out here that have anything they need to present before the board before we get started on our meeting?
Mr. Chairman, just for the audience's sake, this is anyone that wants to talk about anything except for what is on the agenda for the public hearing regarding the short-term rentals. They can speak at the time of the hearing. They don't have to speak now.
Thank you. As there is no one stepping up, our next item on the agenda is election of officers. This is the time of year where we elect our chairman and vice chairman. Do I have any motions?
I'd make a motion that we have Mark LaGrosse as the chair.
I got a motion for Mark LaGrosse as chairman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? I guess say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I also need a motion for vice chairman.
I'd also make motion for Michelle Anderson to be vice chair.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, congratulations, Michelle. Item number 7, consider the approval of November 4th, 2021 Board of Adjustments minutes. Has anybody had a chance to read over the minutes?
I have.
Any motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, the minutes passed. Thank you. All right, item number 8, consider the approval and adoption of procedures for appealing a revocation of a short-term rental permit. Mr. Hager?
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we went over this in work session. Basically, the hearing that you have tonight is for an appeal of a person whose short-term rental permit has been revoked by staff under the ordinance that was applicable at the time of the revocation. The permit holder is entitled to seek an appeal. I went over those procedures with you. Basically, I'll frame the issue for consideration for the board tonight. I'll make a brief opening statement. I will call my witness. If the applicant or the appellant is present, they have a chance to cross-examine that witness. I'll have a chance for rebuttal. Then I will rest. Then the appellant will have an opportunity to present whatever testimony or evidence that they desire to present. I'll be given an opportunity to cross-examine. He'll have an opportunity for rebuttal, and he will rest, and then the floor will be open for the commissioners to ask any of the witnesses any questions they want relative to the issue. And then when we're done, we'll both close. I'll try to make a brief summation, and then you'll be able to deliberate either publicly or privately at your discretion, and then make a motion in open session on what relief to grant or not grant in this case, and then you'll be free to adjourn, and we'll conclude. I apologize, I forgot the order and left it on my desk, so I'll get that to the city secretary for you to execute and ask that you approve by motion and second that procedure for tonight's proceedings.
Thank you. Okay, item number 9. This is to conduct an evidentiary hearing and consider the appeal of Scott Young to the revocation of short-term rental permit STR 21-10-022474, located at 619 Oak Bend Drive in Coppell, Texas. That would be Oak Bend Block A, Lot 35. Mr. Hager?
Yes. First, Commission, if you would, someone would make a motion to approve the appellate procedures that I outlined for you and ask for a second, and please vote on those, and then I'll get you the order for to sign later.
Thank you. I need a motion.
I move that we approve the appellate procedures we discussed earlier.
I have a motion. Got a second?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passed.
Thank you. Is Mr. Young present? Mr. Young? Matt, would you go out and see if Mr. Young's present, just for the record? Mr. Chairman, we'll kind of sound the hall like we do at the courthouse to see if they, I'm going to hand them out in a minute. This is like going to court, so if you ever get a chance to go down there, now you can say, I've already been, I don't need to go. Okay, so it's just like the bailiff. They would ask the bailiff this time, Mr. Bailiff, have you sounded the hall at least 3 times for Mr. Young?
Yes, sir.
Has he responded?
No.
Okay, we're ready to proceed. First of all, I'll make a small statement as to what the issue is. Under the city has the opportunity and has taken the opportunity to protect the citizens by requiring what is called short-term rentals, that those persons operating a short-term rental, that they must register and meet certain criteria in order to get the required permit to conduct short-term rentals at a residential facility in the city. Short-term rental is generally requires a number of things to be present, one of which it must be your primary residence, meaning that's where you reside as your domicile within the city. So you, under the regulatory scheme that the city has adopted, you can only have a short-term rental in the house that you live in, put it in common parlance. It is this case is about a short-term rental that was ultimately permitted in October of 2021. It came to our attention in January of this year that the short-term rental owner no longer resided or had misrepresented their residency at 619 Oak Bend. And as a result of that, the staff, Mr. Raheel, whose responsibility is to oversee the rental registration program and its enforcement, revoked Mr. Young's permit in January. He exercised his appellate rights, and that's what brings us here tonight. So that frames the issue, and I will, with that, I'll pass out what I think is the evidence in this case. Mr. Hill, do you have your copy?
Yes, sir.
With that, I will make a brief opening statement. It is the position of the city in this matter that in October of 2021, a permit was issued to Scott Young to operate a house owned at 619 Oak Bend, Coppell, Dallas County, Texas, as a short-term rental. We believe the evidence will show that he began operating this as a short-term rental in early August of 2021 without a permit. When we became aware of that, we told him that he had to get a permit, which he subsequently attempted to comply with that. We believe the evidence will show that he misrepresented his residency to the city, unbeknownst to us, that after we learned of his noncompliance with the ordinance, his permit was revoked. In further investigation by the staff in this matter will disclose that he's admitted that he did not live at this address, that he actually lives at an address in Crepe Myrtle in Irving, Texas, and however he continued to rent this facility. We think the evidence will show that he failed to pay the city the required occupancy tax for the residents, that he ran parties at the home, which is specifically precluded under our ordinance, and that he at times has even represented the residents as a, quote, playground, end quote, actually promoting the use of the property as a short-term rental as a party house, all of which are in violation of the ordinance. And we believe that our evidence is conclusive. We believe that he's convicted himself by his own admission that he did not live at the property, not only at the time of its revocation, but he did not even live at the property at the time he made the application, and in fact, he misrepresented his residency at that time. We believe that the appeal should be denied, and with that, we will go ahead. I've handed out 5 books which contain documentary evidence. I would ask for the admission of Exhibits 1 through 17. They're reflected in the book, and I'll request a ruling that those exhibits be admitted into the evidence of the record in this case. Mr. Chairman, I need you to acknowledge that you're going to admit or deny my evidence.
Okay, do we need a motion for that?
No.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and admit your evidence.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will go ahead. I believe that we have some residents from the neighborhood that are also here, but first I will ask Mr. Raheel a series of questions. Obviously, the evidence clearly shows, and I'll go through that very briefly with Mr. Raheel and ask him to explain what we have, but I'll ask him a series of questions, and then I'll ask him to explain the exhibits to you. Obviously, since Mr. Young is not here, he cannot ask any questions, so once I'm done, I will, please feel free to ask any questions of Mr. Raheel you think are appropriate.
Thank you.
Sir, can you please state your name for the record?
Louis Raheel.
And I think before I get to have you swear in our witnesses, anybody that wants to testify or speak tonight needs to be sworn in.
If anybody's going to sit before the board, if y'all would please stand, raise your right hand, and take the oath. Do you solemnly swear or approve that the testimony you're about to give before the Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, can you again please state your name for the record?
Louis Raheel.
And you're employed by the City of Coppell in the Community Development
Yes, sir.
Department. And what is your role in the Community Development Department?
I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development.
And as the assistant director, are you given the responsibility to oversee the registration and implementation of the short-term rental program as adopted by the ordinances of the city of Coppell?
Yes, sir.
And in that capacity, did you have the occasion to become familiar with an address at 619 Oak Bend, Coppell, Dallas County, Texas?
Yes, sir.
And you're familiar with that by complaints that were registered by citizens that live in that neighborhood, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they complained about the operation of 619 Oak Bend as a short-term rental facility, in particular as a party house.
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, did you make contact with the purported owner of the property, Scott Young?
Yes, sir.
Did you explain to Mr. Young that it was required before he rents any short-term rental that he had to obtain a permit from the city in order to operate legally?
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, did Mr. Young represent to you and the staff that his primary residence was 619 Oak Bend?
Yes, sir.
Is that true?
No, sir.
As a result of his representation, however, you issued the permit, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, you were unaware that Mr. Young did not live at that address as his primary residence.
Yes, sir.
And you became aware of that as a result of your investigation by further complaints of citizens that lived in that neighborhood about parties and activity at the house as a short-term rental.
Yes, sir.
And you were able to obtain information both from our residents and as your own investigation that he in a actual email admitted that he didn't live at the address, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I have labeled for you, and that was apparently true at the time he made the application, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it continued up until the time you actually made the revocation.
Yes, sir.
And there's no indication that Mr. Young currently lives at the house, is that
No,
correct?
sir.
And isn't it true, as of today, there was a car parked in the front of that house in the driveway that had a California license plate on it?
Yes, sir.
Now, Exhibit 1 that you have before you is the actual short-term rental ordinance that's applicable in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then it says on page 2 of 7 at the top, primary residence means the usual dwelling place of the applicant's residential dwelling and is documented by at least 2 forms of registration or documents.
Yes, sir.
And he presented documents to you at the time he registered the property, correct, indicating that he lived there.
Yes, sir.
And you've subsequently seen an email that was in September of 2021, a good 30 days before the registration, that he admitted he didn't live there.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't know that at the time, did you?
No, no, sir.
Now, as a requirement to operate a short-term rental, you have, I think it starts at page 3 at the bottom, there's a maximum occupancy, square footage of bedrooms, there's a number of restrictions of unlawful activity at the house that you're not supposed to engage in, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look at number E, which is actually on page 4, it says to operate the short-term rental without paying the required hot fund or hot taxes, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know, every indication from finance, he has not paid any hot taxes to the city of Coppell.
He hasn't.
So he'd be in violation of that section.
Yes, sir.
And then on number 6, to offer or allow the use of a short-term for the sole and primary purpose of having a party venue, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we have indication from the neighbors that there have been several occasions in September, October, up through until the time of January that the house was rented almost exclusively as a party rental house.
In fact, we have by his own admission that he allowed that.
So that would be in violation of our ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And then number 7, fail to include in a written prohibition against the use of short-term rental having a party in any advertisement, listing, or other publication. Isn't it true that Mr. Young advertised the house as a party house?
Yes, sir.
So that would be in violation of the ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Now, exhibit number 2 is an actual plat of the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the official plat of the city with regard to the Oak Bend subdivision.
Yes, sir.
And this is where the house is located.
Yes, sir.
I don't know that you've got a laser pointer, but if you can point out to, as Oak Bend goes north being the top, Oak Bend's the main spine road that comes through the intersection, or through the subdivision, and then hooks down at the bottom. It's down there at the bottom along the creek that this house is currently maintained by Mr. Young.
Yes, sir.
And that neighborhood has limited, and it backs up to the creek itself, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so there's a restriction on how much privacy you have back there in terms of fencing and that kind of thing, so it's so open, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if there's a party in the backyard of Mr. Young's house, his neighbors can pretty much hear whatever's going on back there.
Yes, sir.
Now, number 3, exhibit number 3, is the actual letter where we notified him of his responsibility to get a permit, correct?
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, he did come in and attempt to comply with the ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And then as a follow-up on October 14th, which is exhibit number 4, you told him what the requirements were in order to get registered with the city, correct?
Yes, sir. In the email and over the phone.
Okay. And you know, one of the things it says it must be owner-occupied, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's true that he represented or misrepresented to you that it was owner-occupied.
Yes, sir.
And at the time, the house was not occupied other than for the rental as a short-term rental.
Yes, sir.
So that would have, had you known that then, you would have not issued the permit.
Yes, yes, sir.
Then on exhibit number 5 is when we started getting email information from, I think, Nancy Bookout, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so this is a written record, if you will, of the party house venue that was being used at 619, correct?
Yes, sir.
And was that addressed with Mr. Young?
Yes, sir.
And if you will, Commissioners, look at Exhibit 6. In Exhibit 6 is an email on Airbnb that specifically says, and Scott responding to, that they had a great time having a bachelorette party at the 619 address. And this was in 2021, so this shows that he was actually operating prior to the time that he come in and got registered, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we now know that he actually moved in August of 2021, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, exhibit number 7, that is the actual short-term rental permit as it exists in the city records, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he lists his address at 106 North Denton Tap as business address, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know where that is?
Yes, sir.
It's Tom Thumb, isn't it?
True. Yes,
So as far as we can tell, he doesn't either have an office or live at the Tom Thumb that we're aware of.
Yes.
Now, he also listed 1809 Crepe Myrtle, which is the address he does live at, the best that we understand and know today.
Yes, sir.
And he identifies a Mateo Young. Do we know who Mr. Young, this Mr. Young is?
It's his son.
And it also indicates in here there's a box checked at the bottom. You've got it highlighted on the screen there, correct?
Yes, sir.
And doesn't it say, I certify that I am the property owner and occupy this residence as my primary residence, and I will provide an informant brochure to my guests that includes my 24-hour contact information and a local 24-hour contact number, correct?
Yes, sir.
When he signed, and then he signed it, isn't that his signature in the lower left-hand corner?
Yes, sir.
And that's not true.
Now we know that it wasn't true at the time of the signature.
It's not true today, and it wasn't true the date he signed it.
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 8, he indicated to you that he had paid the required registration fee and that he was free to operate at that time. And at that time, on the 29th of October, we did not know at that time that he was not being truthful with us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 9 is again some complaints we received from local residents complaining about 619 Oak Bend as a party house.
Yes, sir.
Then we go to the next, which is exhibit number 10. And that's the letter that you sent to him indicating that we now know that you do not live at that address. It's never been your primary residence since the time of the registration, and we're revoking your permit.
Yes, sir.
And did you speak to him after that so you know that he received this letter?
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, he asked for this hearing, did he?
Yes, sir.
And then he didn't even show up, did he?
We don't see him here tonight.
So he's wasted their time, your time, the city's money to have me come down here and prove up that he's, at best, untruthful.
Yes, sir.
Then on the next is Exhibit 11, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Exhibit 11 is the notice of this hearing, correct?
Yes,
and
sir.
we've sent this to the surrounding citizens.
Yes, sir.
And some of them are here tonight. And they've taken time out of their schedule to come down here, and he didn't even have the courtesy to tell these people or to come to them or come here and plead his case. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Then in October 2021, in Exhibit 12, is another email that we have from him. And this email is important because in October of 2021, when he signed that application in front of you and asked for the city to give him a permit to legally operate his facility, he says in this email that we found that he doesn't live there, does he?
Yes, sir.
Have been working on improvements after we moved out, but time-consuming move out and move into the new home. October 2021.
Yes, sir.
He deceived the city, he deceived you, he deceived your department, he deceived the citizens, and he's now here not even giving us the courtesy of coming forward and pleading his case. True?
Yes, sir.
All right. As a result of this, there was also an email that said he lived only 15 minutes away, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so you took time out of your schedule to go actually drive from Crepe Myrtle to the Oak Bend address.
Yes, sir.
And how long did that take you?
15 minutes.
So we have a pretty good idea that Mr. Young lives at Crepe Myrtle in Irving, Texas, not 619 Oak Bend, Coppell, Texas.
Yes, sir.
And Exhibit 14 is a picture of the house, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then Exhibit 16 is records of the Dallas Central Appraisal District. As a result of your investigation and that by your department, it shows that Mr. Young is the owner of the house at 619 Oak Bend, and he's the owner of the house at 1809 Crepe Myrtle.
Yes, sir.
And that's the same Crepe Myrtle address that's in there with young Mateo Young, who was apparently his son living at that address.
Yes, sir.
Again, evidence that that's probably where he's residing, and that's his primary address, correct?
Yes, sir.
Next, we have a email that was initiated from one of our council members through staff that ended up on your desk that basically showed how he was advertising this as a playground house, right?
Yes, sir.
And that was on Airbnb.
Yes, sir.
And it was clear that his intent was, at least from your perspective, as the enforcement, he was offering this as a party house.
Yes, sir.
And last is another email that you were able to locate, either from one of our wonderful citizens or through staff investigation that shows that I only live 15 minutes away, correct?
Yes, sir.
Again, showing that he does not reside at the house.
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness for any questions that the commission may have.
I have no questions.
There are some citizens here that live in the neighborhood. If the commission would like to hear from them.
I may ask one question for
Sure.
clarification real fast. It's been a pretty significant portion of it that it's a party house, just the actual definition here somewhat a little bit, I can get the meaning, but I was looking at, I guess, Exhibit 1 on that page 4 of 7 where it kind of lines out what the requirements are. And we're just wondering, are we looking more at E6 or E7 on that? Is it that it's the sole and primary purpose of a party house, or that it wasn't posted, that it was prohibited to establish or use it as a party house on every advertisement?
Actually, he cannot use it as a party house, which violates our city ordinance, but
Sure.
also violates Airbnb requirements.
Certainly. I just didn't know how we I gather, he's not there and there's parties being posted in comments. So I just wanted to make sure, like, as far as on record, in case it came back, how did we establish that this in fact was a party house beyond people just, quote, having fun or having gatherings, et cetera?
Yeah, those people that
That'll
are
happen
about to
in that.
testify are about to tell you.
Perfect. Just wanted to clarify the position for our board and for the vote. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Raheel.
Okay,
And
are there
then
anybody else who wants to come and speak before the board? Good evening. Please state your
Hi,
name and
I'll
address
be
for the
brief.
record.
My name is Jackie Bresnahan, and I live at 607 Oak Bend, which is 3 houses down. So when you see the picture up there, 3 houses to the right. So I share the same back creek and the same shared open space. So I moved to Coppell 34 years ago, and when we built our house 5 years later, we were excited to live in a small, incredibly special place with tight-knit and great schools that fostered community. We considered ourselves fortunate to find that all this with a nice tract of land in the back. And we know most of our neighbors, and each of us have land that extend out in the creek. You saw that picture back there. And we wander freely. This creek, it's play area, it's where we raised our kids. Starting last year, I guess you have the dates, I didn't know exactly, I knew it was around summer. We started noticing people wandering in our back. And it's a little unnerving because we can't put fences up. So we know pretty much everybody back there, so it's easy to notice when you don't know who that is. And so it does complicate that we can't put fences, but it is private property, and we feel like no one would love to have people wandering through. And it's somebody different every time. There were several times where there would be a new set of people there every single day. There would be big parties, so loud at night at 2 in the morning that 3 houses down would wake us up. So it was not calm. There were some day parties, some night parties. Not every single one was crazy, but when we built that house 29 years ago, we were not anticipating living with a hotel next to us, basically. And the street is, the ordinance, I believe, says 4 cars, and there would be 20 cars there. And when it gets really old day after day in the summertime. So I don't have any young children anymore, but our next door neighbors have 4-year-old twins, and they're very concerned to let them out. You just don't know who's going to be wandering back there. And so anyway, I feel like using that house as a business is not what our neighborhood in Coppell should be about. And that's why zoning laws were created. So anyway, I just think that allowing this to continue in any way whatsoever is just counterintuitive to a family neighborhood. And so I'm hoping that you wouldn't want this house next to you either. And I'm hoping that you can keep this from happening any longer and disallowing it. And it sounds like he's broken several of the, I guess, ordinance statutes or what like that. But anyway, we just really don't want it to continue to operate, and we would appreciate your support on that. So thanks. Any questions? I don't want to go into all the details, but there were some really crazy parties there. So thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak before the board? Okay. One more chance before I close the public meeting.
I will point out to the commission that in Exhibit 16, if you go to the second page, when we received this from one of our citizens, Miss Nelson, and I don't know if Miss Nelson's here.
She was not able to make it tonight.
She indicates that our neighbors have had drunk guests attempt to either enter their car and house. And I think that nothing is more unsettling. It's one thing to be loud, but it's another thing for some of these people. And we don't know who they are. We don't know who the guests are. We know who we rent the house to, but we don't know. And then, of course, being a little rhetorical, they can lie to us when they do that. But we have no idea who the guests are. And for people to be wandering around the neighborhood drunk and trying to get in your house or attempt to get in your car, and especially with, teenage kids and young kids, is very unsettling. So I would like to just point that out to the commissioners, and that evidence is in the record as well.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to recess for about 5 minutes for deliberation.
Okay, that'd be fine. And then if you would, I'll help you with the motion if one's appropriate at the time after you've had a chance to deliberate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Board of Adjustments is back in session. I'm ready to entertain a motion.
So I make a motion to reverse the revocation of the permit.
I have a motion to reverse the revocation. Do I have a
When you say
second?
reverse the revocation, you mean grant the appeal or deny the appeal? He's asked for it to be, the revocation to be revoked. Are you saying to revoke the permit or to continue the revocation of the permit?
Say that again, please.
Let's start over. Let me read you what the ordinance says. Because I know this is confusing, and I struggle with this with everybody.
Would it just be easier if we said grant or grant the appeal?
I know what that means, but I want to read in the record so that you understand what that means.
Okay.
And it says here, the Board of Adjustment, upon completion of the hearing, shall, by a majority vote of 4/5, overturn the decision of Mr. Raheel to revoke the permit. So it would be a motion to grant Mr. Young's appeal or a motion to deny Mr. Young's appeal. So we understand. If it's to deny his appeal, Mr. Raheel's decision, permit is gone. If it's to grant Mr. Young's appeal, then the permit is reinstated. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The motion to grant the appeal, if you say it in the affirmative, takes 4/5. So I need 4 of you to vote in favor. I will tell you, just let this happen, it'll be okay. And the reason if it's a denial and it doesn't get 4/5, then we have to revote. It's just easier to do a positive motion. That's how they've been trained. So wait for the vote, and then I'll tell you what the effect of that is.
I make a motion to grant the appeal of Mr. Young.
Okay, and that's a second.
I'll second.
And then we need 4 out of 5, you have to vote yes. So all those in favor to vote yes, they would raise their hand.
Okay, all in favor of granting the appeal? All opposed? Say aye.
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 Aye, okay, the appeal has been denied.
Mr. Chairman, is that a unanimous vote?
That is a unanimous vote.
Thank you. I will draft the appropriate order in our business, and I will send it to Ms. Cammie, who will then call you to have you come and sign, reflecting your decision here tonight. I thank you for your time. I'm sorry that we've taken your time from your schedule when you didn't even bother to show up. I think that that's poor form. I'll say this publicly, I'm glad he moved out of town.
Thank you. Since there's no other business, we're adjourned.